Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build. This time we're continuing a new series, with Danielle Urban. How you doing, Danielle?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. I love the kind of collection of shows we have here. I've always had a hard time focusing on all the point solutions and easy buttons that everybody wants to talk about. And now I have other people that also don't want to start there without talking a bunch of strategy first. And that's what, this series is all about. Trying to make HubSpot a place where people like to work and it's easy to get their job done. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Zoom out before you zoom in.
Yes. Speaking of zooming out and zooming in, as we think about how to achieve the goal of workspaces and clean data and everything that, users, customers say that they want, I would love for you to respond to this request that I received earlier this year. And maybe you can give some feedback on my answer too. Customer is looking for short and long-term revenue operation support, mostly in data hygiene and workflow creation. They have a list of tasks they need done immediately. They do not want to wait for a portal audit to get started, but are open to more long-term strategy once immediate tasks are complete. They're also exploring a custom build integration.
I have some feelings.
I did
Do you want
too.
to tell us what you said first, or do you want me to just dive right in?
I just said, thank you for thinking of us. This would not be a good fit for us at this time.
I applaud your professionalism in that reply. Very impressive. Yeah, that would be a pass for me too. Um, but I think it really comes down to like why why we're all going to say no to this. And it's you can't skip the audit, you just can't. And I kind of cringe at the word audit in general because it means so many different things to different people. It's like the word campaign. So for some people a campaign is like an email send, for other people a campaign is like a multi-year multimedia like billboard and Times Square strategy. So really understanding like what an audit is probably why they were like, we don't have time to wait for this. They think of it as like some massive like reverse engineering of their entire business. And in some cases you have to do that, especially if they're asking you to build workflows. That scares me a bit. But it's really starting with like, well, why do they need these things? Like, let's back up and figure out what's happening that you have this list of requests. Um, and map that to what the process is. And that's sort of where I usually start with my audits is like, what are the processes we need to work on? Because I could go in, I could audit your CMS, I could audit your email deliverability, I could audit your user permissions, I can audit your custom objects. Like I could spend months auditing a HubSpot portal. But what it really comes down to is like, what do you need to get done? What do I need to understand to help you do that better? And then where do we go from here? So the fact that they're like, we're not going to wait, it's a hard no.
Yeah. No, that's where, like, if I would have, maybe if I would have been in a different place in the business, I would have tried to educate on why an audit was
Fair.
needed. But the other part was like the integration they were looking at had to do with like sales prospecting AI bots. And I was like, yeah, I think I know all I need to know. Sorry for the judgment, but easy buttons abound. And like, look, we can get you to the easiest buttons available to you on the market in the HubSpot platform. But we
Yeah.
cannot do that without understanding what your goals are and how you've attempted to achieve them inside of your HubSpot platform, what it currently looks like, especially with stuff like automation and workflows. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're bringing somebody in from outside, that's why we don't take it, right? Like we're not if we do take it and we like only get paid for the tasks, we cannot do the tasks without doing the audit, like, or else we
Right.
are risking this person's platform. So
We're all going to be unhappy if we just start building automations. And I've seen that happen. Like, I've seen cases where an automation was built in a workflow and I don't know if they didn't test it or didn't like go through and understand the impact of what was happening, but there was an issue where it needed to be the internal value versus the like front end value. And because that wasn't happening, everything was breaking. And it's like, well, if you don't understand how this fits into the broader process, you don't understand what the downstream impact of that piece not working is. Like, sure, you slapped it together, you stood up a workflow, you thought it was going to accomplish what they wanted because somebody told you to build the workflow. But if you don't understand how that fits into the process they're trying to improve, the process they're trying to stand up, what they need to test, what they need to measure past that point, then no one's going to be happy with the result. Like, you just can't get it done. So yeah.
So why do you think like we're here in the first place when people are so averse? Because clearly there's a wall there. But why have they built these walls against things like audit?
It's hard to say. I think it depends on the company. I'm coming at this as like a HubSpot dinosaur. I've been using HubSpot since 2013 or so. And even before that, as a little baby intern in Cambridge, I was going into the HubSpot offices for their various media productions and parties and whatever. So I feel like I've been in the HubSpot world forever. And way back then, it was really easy and simple. There like wasn't a whole lot to HubSpot. And then they bought other pieces and they sort of mashed them together. And then we got the platform that we have today after lots of iterations and integrations and all that. So I don't know if people even understand what an audit means, because perhaps they're like me, coming from understanding HubSpot as a simple solution and it's not as robust because it's meant for small businesses. So they're like, well, we don't need an audit. Like there's not much to it. There's not much there. But when you start to talk about automations, it kind of depends on their starting point, where if they have a lot of messy data to begin with, which from that email, it sounds like if they're asking for data hygiene, they know enough that they need to ask for data hygiene. But some people think like, oh, my business is so small, maybe it's only 2 or 3 employees. And it's like, well, if you're asking for help for HubSpot at this point, then you're clearly trying to grow, or you have a reason to ask for that help. So when you move from very simple to like trying to take that step forward to the more complex, some people are like, nah, I just don't need it. Like there's not enough going on here. But it's like, to take that step, you do need it. And then there are other people who maybe have all of the hubs and they're putting together their CMS and their email and their everything, like their entire sales process, their renewal process, like everything happens in there. You even throw service in there. And then they're like, well, I just need help with this one thing. We know that like that can't happen. And maybe they know that it's so big it could take a long time for you to pull it apart. Maybe they've worked with another consultant that dug into too many things and wasn't focused enough. It's really hard to know who's coming to, or what they're coming to the table with when they say, I don't want an audit. And I feel the same way. People say like, oh, can you do an audit for us? Some people even offer free audits. And naturally, the next question should be, what's in the audit? What are you auditing? But mostly, I should be asking that to my clients, because I need to know what are your goals so that I know what to go audit.
Yeah. And in the right audit, well, I shouldn't say that, but like there's audits where it's just like somebody who knows how to look at your portal just explains to you what is in your portal. And then there's audits that, start to touch on what your goals are and things like that. And I totally agree that us in the digital space always find ways to just make it really hard to understand what simple words like audit mean.
Yeah.
But also when you interact with different spaces, especially outside of SaaS, audit is like, it's like a death sentence for some people, like whether it's financial audits or like quality control audits, like it has the capability of like shutting down their operations. And there's just so much nuance to it. But the key is like, and it's the hard part is It's like when you have let's say a relationship with a partner that doesn't go very well, and it could be as recent as like 3 months ago. It doesn't matter if they did an audit. Like you're bringing somebody new in and they need to understand what's going on with your system
Right.
before you should let them, touch your portal, right?
Yeah. It should throw up a red flag if anyone says, yeah, let's dive right in. Like, skip over that. Give me your task list. I think we've talked before. I don't know if we've talked about it on a recorded session, but I've definitely spoken with folks about the different levels of HubSpot consultants that you can work with. And so there are people who can almost become an embedded member of your team. They just click the buttons, make it happen. I've heard Max Trailer describe them as order takers, where there's someone internally who's really driving the strategy, knows what's happening, and just needs another person to execute. And those people, I feel like you can maybe skip the audit. There's more of an onboarding process like you would with a new employee. So they need to understand how everything is going to change when they touch something. I will fully admit that I have made the mistake of changing lead scoring without understanding the impact of those lead scores. I will never make that mistake again. So it's very easy to even have someone who is really just coming in to take direction and click the buttons. They still need to understand what's happening too. Maybe we don't call it an audit. Maybe it's a 2-week onboarding. But that education step is essential even at the lowest level. Like, you could literally hire an intern to do some of the work if you're giving them enough direction, but you need to be super, super specific if you're not going to give someone that opportunity to really get their head around it. But then you go to the other end of the spectrum and it's like you need someone who is helping you define processes and like the almost a solutions architect type person come in and really map your business into the platform so that you can be more efficient. And those people are going to do an audit that is going to look like a process audit of your entire business, in addition to understanding what's inside of HubSpot and the other platforms that connect to it. So there's really no part of that continuum of expertise where you can skip the getting to know you part. And the audit is, selfishly, it's for me to get to know what's happening in your business, in your HubSpot account, before I can do anything that's actually helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's selfish to help you, like,
Right.
right, like,
Exactly.
because like we're just asking for a little bit of self-awareness here. Like if you're asking
Yeah.
for help, especially like something like data hygiene, and
Mm,
you're about to integrate any kind of AI mechanisms, uh, and you own the portal, you're the one that let it get to that state.
right.
So I would ask you not to like put 100% trust in yourself that you could give somebody direction and the right task list. I mean, that's where it goes wrong. Like, if you'd find somebody willing to do that and they start going through the task list, you will not make it through like without
Yeah.
some kind of problems. And that's where, we talk a lot about coaches and finding support, where usually we can get to an understanding like this is why this stuff needs to happen. These are options
Mm-hmm.
to make it take longer, or even like once we just get a little bit of information, we can find, some quote unquote quick wins that
Right.
are more risk averse, and can band-aid any wounds. Like there's definitely times where you need to triage stuff,
Of course.
but kind of taking the overall approach of just like skipping and onboarding, if you will. And maybe that's when we just start using different words, but really
Yeah.
it comes down to, if we're in a conversation, right, uh we can talk through it and it matters less about which words we're using. But when you start off with like, I don't want this and this and this, and you act like urgency, just know you're not setting yourself up to get, the help that you need in most
Right.
situations.
It's funny that you bring up the vocabulary again, because when I'm talking with potential new clients or even clients that I'm just starting my engagement with, I very rarely use the word audit. I actually really hate using that word in conversations because it means so many different things to different people. And I live kind of in a SaaS bubble. I work mostly with SaaS companies. So they don't bristle at the word audit like some other industries might. But it still is such a loaded thing that I need to say, let's talk about this goal that you have in mind, or let's have another conversation to really identify what those goals are and understand how you want to move your business and your team forward over the next, say, 2 quarters. And then I say, I'll get in and poke around in your HubSpot account. And really what I want to do with that is not audit your account. I want to figure out what your subscription level is, how many contacts you're working with, how many marketing contacts you have there, so that I can start to piece together what it's going to take. Like, am I turning a cruise ship or am I turning a Boston whaler? Because these are going to be very different conversations that happen next. And that's just like an absolute baseline. I wouldn't ever call that an audit. And then after I have that conversation where it's like, let's define your goals with me, with your business. And now I understand how that is fitting into why you need my services and why you reached out to me. Then I will poke around more and start to reverse engineer some of the automations that are there, really dive deeper into some of the things that you've already customized. I usually do a full export of all properties. Because that can get really messy. And then I just filter it to anything created by someone other than HubSpot.
I
You
learned
find
so
some
much.
scary things in there.
Yeah, I learned so much from doing that.
But even as I'm doing that, I'm not going to tell them it's an audit. I'm going to say, like, okay, now I understand your goals. I'm going to go understand what these processes look like in your portal, or what we need to change in your HubSpot portal. Audit does not enter the conversation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because again, like, especially when you see all these success stories and, you know, people like partners with all these, great reviews, it's very rare that you find somebody who's willing to start a relationship without some sort of getting to know you phase, right? Getting to know you, getting to know your portal, and getting to know you, how you work in the portal, right? All those things. I've come around to the concept of every business is different, just in terms of like they all have a different set of human beings inside the business, and that has a huge impact. So just even understanding that, goes a long way. And that's where you can get a lot out of reviewing things like who's making which properties, which lists with views, like stuff like that. So that makes sense.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because as you were talking, I was thinking about there's sort of the templated process of bringing people into your business and onboarding them, whether you're an agency or an independent consultant. It looks different for everybody. But with me being an independent consultant, I'm able to be very flexible about what that onboarding looks like, and sort of given any past relationships they might have, like you're saying, who is on the team, that onboarding process and that audit phase is going to look very different for most of my clients. And a lot of my clients have started with me when they have a pro subscription, and then they've upgraded to an enterprise subscription. And I freaking love that, because it's like a blank slate to create something really custom. And no one's gone too crazy yet with custom objects and automations. That can get out of hand very, very quickly, even if I'm there when they do the upgrade. But yeah, it can look different every time you get started, even if you're following the same process.
So what do you think? So for you, when you're doing this, what is the usual outcome when you are given the opportunity to review everything? What kind of output should be expected?
Yeah, it's entirely driven by the company's goals. So if an organization is coming to me and saying, we want to increase our lead gen in the next quarter by dumping money into advertising, then I'll probe them a little further and say, like, okay, what are you committed to? What type of advertising are you doing? How do you want to track this? Then we get into, like, what is your current attribution strategy? Is there an attribution model that's in place? And sort of understand what's there. And they might be like, like, we just want leads. And so then it turns into a conversation of like, okay, well, you want my help because you want to measure what's happening with those. So now let's lay the groundwork for how you're going to measure that. And like piece together what that looks like in HubSpot. So it doesn't actually have anything to do with HubSpot until pretty far into that conversation, because it really just starts with, what are your goals? I had someone else who was their CRO came to me, and they were having a lot of trouble with their renewals. And so they were closing these big deals, and then they had some renewals happening through automations. And now they're having trouble reporting on what those renewals really look like. And so we're taking a step back and understanding, what are the automations doing? It had some outside plugins that I had never really seen before, but I had to understand what those were, how they worked, make sure I had access to even check that out. And then get into, okay, well, we're going to spend an hour with you, the CRO, clicking around on the screen to tell me where you're not seeing the thing that you want. And then we're going to take another step back. So now I understand the process of how we got to where we are. I know what's happening to put new deals in a pipeline, and I know what you want to see. Now I'm adding the piece of what are you currently looking at, and where are we missing that piece. And then I try to bring it all together, which is why people pay me to like really figure out how do we connect all of those dots so that the dashboard that you care about and log into every single day is showing you that number, and the architecture on the back end is creating a system that's not just there to show you that number, but is actually going to fit the rest of your business so that your CSMs and your CS manager, the head of that team, is also getting what they need and can function in the tool in a way that is really efficient for them. So my job is to really take that big step back and piece it all together in a way that makes sense within the tool.
Yeah. And that architecting is just so powerful. And at the end of the day, that's usually what you are paying for, and
Yeah.
why this process is so valuable. Because usually, I mean, uh, half of this process is just like helping you get clear on what your real goals are for your business.
Yes.
Because if you're coming looking for attribution, I'm going to point to, at this point, it's like a knee jerk reaction. Like, oh, you're trying to, protect, the marketing team, or you're trying to prove the value of marketing in this, possibly dysfunctional setup. Or, if you're just looking for leads, there's clearly a lack of understanding in what you could be getting out of your investment, first of
Right.
all, and two, like what the underlying business goals, and what's amazing is once you're able to, I don't think it's always like they're not trying to overlook this stuff. It's just so often HubSpot was sold to them as a very, point solution, answer. So they've treated it that way, and they haven't resourced it properly. So the fun part for us is we get to help connect the dots. Like here's the investment you're making, and here's the actual tool that you have access
Right.
to, and it can do this, and this is how it connects to your business goals. All of a sudden, like, leadership gets in line, you start getting the resources people need, all the users are put in better positions. And when we start talking about stuff like workspaces, all of that goes in. So like when you talk about your, architecting, bringing it all together, in the best case scenario, we bring it together in very clear, like dashboards and workspaces, so that, everybody gets what they need, and it's not like a monster to maintain and manage either. Right.
Right. Yeah, I should never be setting you up to have more work than you're starting with. So if I've done that, I have not done my job well.
Right. And like managed services contracts too, like,
Yeah.
you know,
I know. We're about to go really off the rails here.
oh man, like when we
No,
think
it's
about
funny
like,
though. It's
yeah,
because you start talking about the senior leadership and like not knowing the goals. Uh, one of the things I try to do when I start my engagements is like get the senior people on my call. Like I know it's hard. It's going to be difficult to schedule. They think this is a marketing project that they just want to write a check for and forget. But when it really comes down to it, especially because people can be paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for HubSpot just to run all of their contacts and have all of these different hubs come together and really make it the foundation of running their business, then you could not have senior leadership on the call. Like they need to understand the implications of not being able to track your sales pipeline appropriately. And like, let's get finance on the phone so that you can talk about what finance needs to see and how that relates to sales, if sales is using everything that they should be. So, as much as I've had calls, when I have calls with just a marketing team, there's a lot of complaining, understandably. And I do welcome that. Like, I want to know what's bothering you so that we can start to fix it. Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's not. But when you can really take another big step back and get senior leaders, get your C levels in that call where we talk about goals, they are going to have their business goals that is driving everyone else's team. And then the marketing team is going to have their goals that they work towards meeting those business goals. And so when you can really get that complete picture, has nothing to do with HubSpot, but it does eventually come back around, and it gives me, the consultant, so much better context to be able to architect solutions that are going to serve everybody instead of just solving the marketing team's need for attribution because they need to defend their budget.
Yeah. And like watching the magic of no longer having to defend it because it's just in front of the people who care every day. And it's like, it's such a weight lifted when you can show up to these meetings and you're all looking at the same information. Everybody's looking at the same data. This mythical like source of truth we always hear about actually is a source of truth. The conversation like just changes completely, and we start talking about like goals and progress that we're making and what we're going to do. With those things, we're making decisions in meetings instead of just talking about how everything's dysfunctional every meeting and we wish we could do something about it. Like you have, I'd say no matter what level of HubSpot that you have at this point, largely whichever hub you have access to a tool that can help you solve those problems. But it's got to start from a place of strategy and understanding where you are and where you got to go. Yeah. And you shouldn't put on yourself either, which again, we're starting with why, things like audits and reviews and onboardings are important, is that the HubSpot platform, one, has moved so quickly, right? Yes. And there's likely things that you're not taking advantage of that would cost no additional, money to get and get value out of. But two, like we understand you've got other things to do, right? And you shouldn't put it on yourself to stay up to date. It's very hard for even the most focused admins to stay up to date at a company because they have all these internal relationships, to manage and all these internal processes. So like, just give yourself permission to kind of stay, like get the help, that you need. And once you have that, man, it really unlocks, what HubSpot can do for your business.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the updates. Everything's moving so fast. I mean, I'm supposed to be on vacation this week, but I'm not very good at that, especially as an independent consultant. And you were just telling me about the new property association cards that can show progress and can show there was another one you talked about too, but
all-bound activity.
Yeah.
Calendar.
That like multi-touch calendar, absolutely mind-blowing. Totally missed that, even though I've been scrolling LinkedIn at least once a day. Like I can't even keep up with it, and I'm completely immersed in this world. And I, do my best to stay on top of it. But like, there's just so much happening all the time. No one person can be expected to stay on top of it. God bless Kyle Jepsen, because he's our only hope at that person existing.
Well, he set the tone, and that was a big inspiration for why I even started, this series in the first place. And that's why we're doing this, like, education and understanding what HubSpot can do for your business can just have a huge impact. And the cards examples that you just gave, it's literally like, some of the best relationships have started with, hey, I think you should care about this product update. Here's a link. And, it's not coincidental that when this happens, like HubSpot, maybe they're just doing so much that you're going to hit like 1 out of 5, but like you always get this feeling. It's like, yes, oh my God, I've been waiting for this forever. And it saves like an hour. That happens all the time now. And it's literally like, once you see it, like 5-minute setup sometimes. And it's just the way everything's coming together, right? We actually can give you an individual workspace for each person on your team where it's customized to what they want and what they need to see. And, this is the first step though, understanding what they want to see, what the business needs them to see, and it starts with this process but this is a lot of what we're going to be, moving into as we talk about, workspaces and rec reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much there.
There is so much, and we'll do our best to keep up. But we're building an army over here of people that are just, HubSpot can do so much, and it's moved so fast. And all we can do is just help you understand what it can do for your business. Just know that's always where we're going to start.
Yeah.
How do you see it for your business? Because if you don't see it, the way that it connects to your goals, then it's never going to be positioned well to come through on that investment for you.
Right. Exactly. And it makes sense for me to follow that goal too. If I can deliver a good service, then, I need some context to be able to do that. So
Indeed. And we're going to help you understand how to give us that context throughout this series. And this has been really great, Danielle. Thank you so much for taking up this topic. It's an interesting one, especially as HubSpot starts to create actual workspaces, for prospecting and help desk and customer success. I love that direction that they're going.
Same.
But again, it takes some work to get those things right. But when they're right, man, teams start to love this platform in a way they haven't before. And it's really exciting to watch. So we're going to keep
more on that later. I'm rolling out the leads and prospecting workspace for a client, hopefully in the next month or two. So
it's so
talk
good.
more about that later.
I usually hate talking about the word leads, but this solves a gap in a way that no other system has, in my opinion. And it's really powerful. So excited to hear about that. And in the meantime, until next Friday, think about your business goals. Think about getting some help with just understanding what your HubSpot is currently doing for you and what it can be doing for you. Find the opportunity and let's grow. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.